Hi, it's Steve Holland here again, Bear Alley Books correspondent, to talk about Beyond the Void, the remarkable history of Badger books. I'm trying to answer some questions that have come in from people. And the second question is, can you tell us about Badger Tracks? Now, Badger Tracks was the photocopied fanzine version of Beyond the Void, although the two are chalk and cheese. There are elements in Badger Tracks that I have replicated in a way, but Beyond the Void is a wholly expanded, thoroughly revised that you just wouldn't recognise the original. Plus, there are new pieces in Beyond the Void that were never in Badger Tracks, so it's a far better product, and in one particular way that I always intended for the book to be presented. What happened was the Badger Tracks book dates back to the 1990s, when I was a member of the British Association of Paperback Collectors, otherwise known as BAPSI. And Roland Gig put out a newsletter, which was subsequently taken over by Paul Duncan. Paul upgraded the newsletter to include articles by other people, so I wrote a few of those. And then Paul became the editor of Crime Time in, I think this would be 1994 or 1995, somewhere around there. I had been editing magazines, Comic World, and I was the editor of a model magazine, Model Mart, and also a 4x4 magazine. I was managing editor of that at the time. I think Comic World had just folded after 4 years or 4.5 years. And Paul was taking on Crime Time. So I had some, spare time. And I thought, I'm used to editing magazines, and how long is a newsletter going to take? Of course, like a fool, I sat down and I started thinking, well, what do I actually want to do with this? Paul had given his issues of the newsletter a name, so I sat down and I thought, okay, well, look, I'm gonna call it PBO. Which is abbreviation. Paperback collectors will know it. It's for Paperback Original. And I was interested in books that had come out originally in paperbacks, especially in the 1950s. So that was going to be my focus from the 1940s all the way through to the 1970s. So I thought, well, this is a good opportunity to actually talk to some people who are still around, people like Peter Haining, Peter Leslie, and authors who had been quite prolific. That was another fascination of mine. So I started off with PBO. It was a fairly reasonably slim first issue. Issue 2, somebody had offered to print it. So I made it. It was a different size. And then when the guy took forever to actually get the printing done, I was rather stuck because I had changed to a specific size that he could print. Anyway, the second issue became the second issue 2-3. We got 4 out. I think that 4 was also held up slightly. Somebody had offered to do the layouts, and that got held up. So I just took it all back under my wing and did issue 5 on my own. And 6 and 7 was always going to be a big one. I wanted to do, as I said, I had an interest in prolific authors, and I wanted to do something on Lionel Fanthorpe and John Glasby. So I interviewed Lionel, a very avuncular, pleasant, cheerful, nice man, um, and John was also agreeable. There was some circumstance he was either moving house or doing something that had meant that I couldn't actually interview him. So when I came to put together what became Badger Tracks, there was a couple of holes. I didn't know much about one of the authors, which is John F. Watt, and obviously I didn't have the interview with John Glasby. So I ended up writing an essay about how good I thought A.J. Mirac was, A.J. Mirac being one of John's pen names. Various other essays. And anyway, the whole thing was put together over a period of months. And I had a friend who scanned book covers for me. This was just after a guy called Samuel Lassalle, who was the publisher, died. And I'd been able to pick up a lot of the Badger books that I was missing through Bob Wodzinski. That meant that I had something like, at that time, I had something like 500 Badgers, or John, I should say John Spencer, because I had quite a lot of the SF magazines, and I also had a fairly substantial collection of the Badgers. So I got a friend of mine to scan loads of them and resize them. How the magazine was produced was, I can't remember the name of the program now, but out of the same house, a magazine called Animace was being produced, which was an anime fanzine. So I used the same program to do the newsletter, and I thought it looked pretty good. Unfortunately, what happened was that the scans, I was just leaving space on doing a printout of the text and leaving space and then sticking the scans down onto the page. When we came to photocopy it, I took a taxi over to Staples, which was some miles away, picked up the pages, and the top few looked okay. But by the time I got back home, I was beginning to realise that the photocopying had come out really dark. But because I'd already paid for it and accepted the pages, and quite frankly, I couldn't afford to get it all reprinted. So I ended up putting together something. I think the membership was about 50 people at the time. So I probably ended up putting together maybe 60 copies. I know I've only got one copy left. In fact, that is the one printed copy that I still have. And you can see from the back cover, the images came out rather poorly. But I can show you what the original looked like, because I found this is the original pages that were photocopied. So this is what I actually produced. And as you can see, that middle picture, you can actually see what's going on. But anyway, so even from the very beginning, I thought, there must be some way of getting this back in, sort of like doing a proper print run and getting it out to more people than are members of the BAPC. So anyway, fast forward, 20 years, 30 years, and I rediscovered this. I thought, I never did do anything with that. So at that time, obviously, people will know me as Bear Alley Books. So you can now do really nice digital books, digital printing. So you won't have the same problem as we had before. But what I wanted to do was actually do a full colour book, because I thought I've got all these covers, and it does seem rather a waste not to benefit from doing the whole thing in full colour. So, yeah, various circumstances in the summer of last year, 2023, meant that I suddenly had a bit of time. I wanted to do the Hank Jansen book, and then I wanted to do this one, which I thought was going to be reasonably quick to do, and I would be able to get both books out by Christmas. As it was, the Hank Jansen came out in September, and the Badger was finished in, I think, November. So I wanted it out before Christmas. I was running late, but more so, the printer was running very late. 1 or 2 other problems occurred with the printer over the next 6 or 8 weeks, but eventually I got a spot-on perfect copy that I was happy with, and ordered up a bunch more copies, which took absolutely ages to arrive. But again, those 5 copies that I'd ordered were spot on. All right, thanks a lot. All right, cheerio.